I'm Alex Sharfin, and this is the Momentum Podcast, made for empire builders, game changers, trailblazers, shot takers, record breakers, world makers, and creators of all kinds. Those among us who can't turn it off and don't know why anyone would want to. We challenge complacency, destroy apathy, and we are obsessed with creating momentum so we can roll over bureaucracy and make our greatest contribution. Sure, we pay attention to their rules, but only so that we can bend them, break them, then rewrite them around our own will. We don't accept our destiny, we define it. We don't understand defeat because you only lose if you stop, and we don't know how. While the rest of the world strives for average and clings desperately to the status quo, we are the minority, the few, who are willing to hallucinate there could be a better future, and instead of just daydreaming of what could be, we endure the vulnerability and exposure it takes to make it real. We are the evolutionary hunters, clearly the most important people in the world, because entrepreneurs are the only source of consistent, positive human evolution, and we always will be. Investor. The next level of the billionaire code is investor. $30 to $100 million. At this level, there's only 70,000 of these companies in the United States. And this is where things change dramatically in every way for an entrepreneur. I've coached dozens of entrepreneurs through this journey and through this incredible place where what really happens is your ability to lead a cohesive leadership team and your ability to duplicate your decision making now becomes the biggest driver of the company. And your ability to find the right people, to bring in the right organization around you is what's going to drive your business when you get to $30 to $100 million, because it's been so long since you could do it all yourself that at this point you have to lean into the team. And the team around you, your time, it's interesting because at owner, you had to give up autonomy of time. You had to tell your team to tell you where they need you. Well, what happens at investor is this. Everything you had to do at owner, your team now has to do at investor. Your executive team now has to do. Here's why. At 10 to 30 million, your executive team was running a business that was like a leader business where they needed to learn transformational leadership. Well, now when you look at from the sheer scope of your business, when you get to 30 to 100 million, your executive team, if you look at what they're responsible for a much bigger organization. So they now have to be able to give up autonomy of time. So now with your time at investor, you coach and support your team to give up autonomy of time. Here's why at investor, you must have created a strong team around you at owner. Because at investor at 30 to 100 million, your executive team will make or break you. Because here's what happens. When you get to investor at 30 to 100 million, everything scales exponentially in your company. Your need for systems goes up. Your need for clear communication goes through the roof because there's a bigger population of people. It's like that telephone game where you say one thing into someone's ear and they say it into the next person's ear. You know, I used to do that at events, even though it's a kid's game. I used to do that at events with high-level CEOs, sometimes that had $30 to $100 million companies, to show them that if the communication system wasn't clear, if they were expecting people to tell each other stuff, if they weren't repeating the same thing over and over again, it just wasn't going to work in their organizations. Well, at investor, that's where it is. As a CEO, everything changes for you because your executive team now is running, now you have executives, and in some cases you'll have directors beneath them, and in some cases you'll have managers beneath them, and in some cases you'll have people beneath them, but you might have team leads, then people. So you're further and further away from the people who are doing most of the work in your organization. And here's why it's so confusing for people like us. I want you to just feel this, especially if you're someone who's crossing out of the 10 to 30 million. I have a couple of teams that are getting there right now. And here's what happens. When I say volume creates complexity, when I say size creates complexity, here's what happens at the 30 to $100 million level. Your business grows, but if we just imagine the traditional organizational chart with the CEO at the top and then the next level and then the next level and the next level, as you know, if you imagine it in your head, it builds like a pyramid. And here's why organizational charts build like a pyramid is because over time, most organizations end up needing more of something done. Organizations end up needing more of whatever it is that they do done. And then you have teams that grow in fast growth companies and organizations. You have teams like customer service and your entry level teams, your entry level people in any department, your sales teams. All of those teams grow exponentially as you go 30 to $100 million. And your entry level layer is now becomes the biggest layer in your company. So think about what that means. 30 to 100 million is exponentially more difficult because now there's more layers of leadership in your company. So if your communication systems aren't crystal clear, they're going to crack when it gets to another level of leadership, when they have to pass over one more level. If the way that you hold a meeting in your company isn't regimented and clear and everybody does it the same way, you're going to have hundreds of different meetings where no one knows what's going on. If you don't have clear communication to the team where they know what to expect from you, know when to expect it, know when they're going to see it, know exactly what's expected from them, then your team's going to suffer. And at this level, that is where pain gets huge. Because as the CEO, if you have to jump back in and run a department at this level, it can twist the entire company sideways. And it can get harder and harder to recover from issues like that. And so when you get to investor, you have to start looking at the business. No, you don't have to. Sorry. When you get to investor, you have to continue to reinforce everything that you put in place levels ago and usually a long time before. I've got some teams that are going through these levels in months instead of years. But for most companies, it takes a while. And so that consistent communication system, that cadence that we teach, where you talk to your team when they expect it and they know what's coming and there's a schedule. So this is why we teach such a regimented system. This is why I recommend the CEOs who work with me don't change our system. They just apply it and then really think first before they changed it, because as the company scales, the system scales with them. And then each new level of leadership communicates exactly the same way. So you can walk into any meeting at any time and talk to anyone in the meeting and just look at the agenda, look at the waterfall for the team, look at the document in front of them that shows what their 90-day targets, their 30-day goals, their weekly commitments are, or their 90-day targets and their 30-day goals. You'll be able to look at their weekly commitments and know within a second what's happening in that meeting. And you will be able to run a much larger organization, which with a much higher level of competence and a much higher level of confidence. And the way that you create a bulletproof executive team is you create a team that is adaptable, because you need a team that can adapt to market conditions, because at 30 to 100 million, you are feeling every market condition. You need a team that is adaptable to the challenges within a business, because at 30 to 100 million, I got news for you. If you think you have HR problems when you're at like 1 to 3 million, at 30 to 100, HR is a daily issue. I've been there. It's literally a daily freaking issue. In fact, as the CEO at 30 to 100 million, that's the level where you absolutely have to insulate yourself from all of the HR issues, because if you hear the play-by-play on all of them, it will kill you. There's far too many. You now need to get like a weekly roll-up, because up until 30 to 100 million, most CEOs are talking about every single HR issue. I usually get my clients out way earlier than that. Weekly roll-up is enough. You don't need the play-by-play. There's too much that goes on in a company. The systems that you create early on, when you get to 30 to 100 million, the better they are, the more everyone in the company runs them, the more every meeting is the same, the more every time someone discusses a 90-day target, they know it's the next 3 months, a 30-day goal, they know, they know it's a 3 months and a quarterly, a 30-day goal, they know it's a monthly measurement, a weekly commitment, they know what you're talking about. You have a language that everyone in your business speaks. Because if you haven't installed it yet at 30 to 100 million, here's what happens. Here's where subtle challenges and subtle changes can take your company sideways. Like, here's an example. In some companies, the phrase quota is used in different ways in different departments. In some companies, a quarterly target means something they are trying to hit in one department, and in another department, it means something you better hit. And what happens is there isn't a clear definition of these things. There isn't a clear way that the company plans forward. There isn't a clear way that goals are set. There isn't a clear way that everyone agrees and gets consensus. And there isn't a clear way that cascades or waterfalls throughout the organization. So what happens is each department becomes a different management system because whoever's leading it uses theirs, which is a train wreck. When you're at 10 to 30, but at 30 to 100, that is where the train will come off the tracks and you won't find it. Here's why. At 30 to 100 million, your team is managing massive businesses. They're managing businesses that are now tens of millions of dollars, or they're managing a percentage of business that represents tens of millions of dollars as you get to the high end of this. And you have to have crystal clear communication systems so that everyone on the team knows what's going on with everyone else on the team. And if there's any departure from exactly the process every single team should be using, then what happens is the company is going to become unwieldy. And here's why it becomes a company that is incredibly vulnerable. If you have an executive leave running what represents tens of millions of dollars in business, and there isn't a clear communication structure, there isn't a clear forward planning structure, there isn't a clear meeting cadence, there isn't a clear understanding of what goals and objectives are and how they are hit and how they are measured. When you put another executive in, they have to rebuild all of those things in a multi-million-dollar department or position that is now an 8-figure, can be even multi-8 figures. And that is incredibly difficult to do. In fact, it's known as a turnaround. And so unless you early on, before you get to 30 to 100 million, install a bulletproof communication system, a clear forward planning strategy, a clear way that your team operates, and you have a culture of performance, it will kill you at this level. But here's why getting to investor is so incredible, because you're deciding where you're going to invest your time, because your focus is leadership development systems. It's developing the leaders you have. It's developing the leaders below them. It's developing the people around you, because that's how your business is going to succeed. At Owner, you ask, how does my team get further ahead? At Investor, we ask, how do we help others get ahead? Your team is now expanded. It's not just executive team and leadership team like an owner. Like I said, this is executive, department teams, leadership teams, maybe even team leads, then people. It's a much bigger structure. And at Investor, we want to create the leadership development systems that support the movement that you are creating as a business. So now your leaders are now proxies to your movement, because at 30 to 100 million, the people in your movement will know the people who work in your business. So you have to look at everyone in that way. And every single person on your executive team, you want an adaptable executive team. You want a team that can get around market conditions, challenges from inside. So here's what that takes. 1, transparent communication. You have to create an atmosphere where you better do it before you get to Investor, but you have to maintain it and Investor, and then you have to push this several levels deep. You have to create an atmosphere where there is transparent communication, where everyone tells each other what's really going on so that everyone knows what's going to happen and the teams can adjust so that nobody just comes in at the last minute and says, hey, we're going to miss a deadline. People are communicating along the way that there might be a challenge. And the teams all know, because if you have the type of team where there's transparent communication, they will adapt and they will move forward. You want a team where there's professional respect. Here's what professional respect means. That means if somebody says, hey, I tried to do this and I couldn't, the team says, okay, we understand, because that happens on every single team. And then the team tries to make sure they help that person moving forward. Now, if that happens over and over with the same person, that's a different story. But professional respect is where we trust what happens around us. And that's the third thing that it takes to create an adaptable team is trust. Now, here's why that communication system is so important. Here's why every time you have an annual meeting, it should be choreographed exactly the same. Here's why every time you have a quarterly meeting, it should be choreographed exactly the same. Here's why everyone should understand the definition of how you plan, what you do, exactly how your daily huddle runs, because the system that is clear and that can be trusted and that creates lateral pressure will create that atmosphere of trust. It will, and the level that you execute that system is the level with which your executive team will trust each other. Because at 30 to 100 million, any issues you have with communications scale, and they don't scale linearly. They scale exponentially, because any issue you have with communications is now scaled across a larger bottom level of your pyramid. As the business grows, if your communication system isn't bulletproof, if you're not training it, if everybody doesn't understand it, if they don't know when they're going to hear what the next month goals are, if they don't know when they're going to hear what the results are, if they don't understand what's going on in your daily huddle, here's what happens. As you scale your business 30 to 100 million, the communications, it just does not trickle down, and it trickles down to it misses a larger and larger population. Now, here's the converse. Here's why it's exciting to get to investor. Not only are you investing your time, at this level, you are having increasingly higher levels of strategic conversation. In fact, you're now talking to people who are leading people who are leading people. And this is a place where, if you are a really forward-thinking entrepreneur, you are going to thrive if you do things right. If you surround yourself with people that make you feel comfortable, if you surround yourself with people who trust each other and make each other feel comfortable, if you surround yourself with a team that communicates and you show them a structure that's clear and you make sure that that structure is there, this can be one of the most exciting places for an entrepreneur. I know, because I've coached so many people through this. It's where we hit this incredible life supercharger, and entrepreneurs just see things differently because there's this massive organization around us. And every one of us has a fantasy in the back of our minds about being a superhero. And, I think about Iron Man and putting on the suit and having every capability physiologically extended and increased and made greater. And I mean, who doesn't want to feel that feeling? Well, as a CEO, when you build this level of organization around you, that Iron Man suit you have around you, you know what that organization is? Here's what people don't realize, because the average person looks at each level of management and says, oh, that's just a level of complication. Well, you know what? They're right. They're right. But if you do things right and you create a communication structure and you create trust on your team because everyone's talking about what's going on, you reinforce transparent communication where people can make mistakes, you recover and you move on. And you make sure that everyone understands if there's a problem, it's the process, not your people. Here's what happens. That Iron Man suit you're wearing is extended in a way you can never imagine. As an entrepreneur, you will feel your capabilities extended to an entirely new level. If you install the communication structure early, you will be blown away at how much you can get done with how little you do. In fact, no joke, a lot of the entrepreneurs that I coach here, come to me and say, hey, I feel like I don't have enough to do. Because with the systems and the structure we put in at this level, you are so highly specialized and your structure and your systems are so clear, and you're talking to people in leadership who are handling really most of the issues because you're one level removed from even like you're not even, you're 2 levels removed from entry level. And the noise level actually, interestingly can go down if you build things right. And if you have a clear structure, this is where you can feel like you really are in that Iron Man suit at an entirely different level. So just remember, as you go up the billionaire code, the rule is it becomes entirely less about what any one person can do, and it becomes more about how everyone can communicate what's going on with each other and get more done together as a team. Because what really makes us feel like we have superpowers as entrepreneurs is when we can get things done quickly, when we can get massive amounts of things done, when we have leverage, when we're having a massive impact and a massive effect, and when we see it getting bigger, when we see it having an increasing effect in the world. None of us likes to stay still. None of us likes to go backwards. I mean, heck, entrepreneurs have trouble buying smaller cars. Once we go out and buy a big car, we have trouble stepping into a smaller car. I know I did. I mean, you think it. We don't like to buy smaller houses either. We like there's things, we don't ever want to make less one year than we did the year before. Everything for us has to be in an ascending curve. And when you put the right structure in your business and you put the right investment in your people and you hit this investor level, the 30 to 100 million, it's one of the most exciting and one of the most incredible places to be as an entrepreneur. And I want you to get there. So if you are an entrepreneur who is ready to put the right systems and structure in your business, if you want to put a cadence in your business like I talked about today, regardless of what level you are, we start much earlier with some of our online products. So we have, even for those who are starting out, if you're the seeker or the starter level and you want to put the system that you can use all the way to get to the end of the billionaire code, do me a favor, go to billionairecode.com and one of my team will reach out to you and make you aware of how we can help you. Billionairecode.com. Get some clarity around exactly how you're going through the billionaire code and understand the system and the structure that you can use at every single stage to have the ultimate clarity as to whether you're going forward or just standing still. Because when people like us have a clear outcome, an understanding of what we have to do to move forward, and a scoreboard that matters to us, we always end up at the top. We can show you our cadence. It's exactly that structure to help you get there.